Hey, y'all. Welcome to episode 43 of the Growing Space podcast. Today's episode is part one of a two-part little mini series that I'm doing this month. It's July. If you're listening to this after it goes live, maybe a couple weeks later, maybe you're binge listening. This episode is being shared in July, which is the month that I celebrate every year. Another year of being in business. And I thought a fun way to celebrate this year would be to share some of your stories. So I have interviewed two of my clients. Oddly enough, they're both named Jen. They're both lovely individuals, and I can't wait to share these conversations with you over the next 2 weeks. Within each conversation, I have a set of questions that I ask each Jen. And they share some really authentic, genuine answers about what led them to wanting to grow food, what their growing spaces look like, what challenges and surprises they've experienced along the way. So I'm really excited to share these two conversations with you. This week will be the first Jen A. Literally, her last name starts with an A, so Jen A. And Jen has been such a supporter of mine over the years. She really has. She's always there. She's always supporting me, whether it's booking services or being a plant club member or scheduling a weekly delivery. She has just been there. I'm just super appreciative of clients like Jen, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to share her story with you all today, or allow her the opportunity to share her story with you today. So let's just go ahead and get started with a conversation with Jen. Welcome to the Growing Space podcast. I'm your host, Farmer Erin, owner of the Patio Farmer, and I believe that no matter what size space you have, you can grow food at home. Tune in every Tuesday as I share my best tips, tricks, and encouragement for tending to homegrown edible plants. I'm here to support your food growing journey. The Growing Space podcast is sponsored by Plant Club by the Patio Farmer. Plant Club by the Patio Farmer is a monthly subscription service I started in 2020. It's a membership-based opportunity to take your growing journey to the next level. With 4 different membership options, you get to decide the amount and kind of support that's right for you. All Plant Club members receive access to my online community through a platform called Circle. Having access to this platform allows members to share pictures, ask questions, celebrate harvests, and get to know each other. All Plant Club members also have access to free seeds each month, along with information on how to plant and tend to their crops, with seeding instructions and downloadable resources from the Patio Farmers Resource Library. Membership starts at just $14 a month. Join Plant Club today by visiting my website, thepatiofarmer.com/membership. Well, hey, Jen, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm really super excited for our conversation. You are one of my longest customers, Plant Club members, and I love just watching all of the things that you're growing and doing at home and in your growing space. So thank you for joining the show today. I appreciate you. So if you could just start off by introducing yourself and letting us know some of the things that you do, that you're up to.
Oh, all right. It's a lot. I'm Jen Aycock. I was an elementary school teacher for 18 years and then decided to take some time to be with my family, a little mental health break. And so now am working on homesteading more, dabbling in some herbal medicine with Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine. And I have just recently started an online bookstore, which hopefully will become a brick and mortar eventually down the road. So it's called Sip on Stories. And I know we have some mutual friends, Fred and June's bookstore, that they've been wonderful mentors with that as well. But a lot of my relaxation time at home is spent in the garden.
Wonderful. It's a great place to relax for sure.
Yeah.
So how long have you been growing food at home?
Let's see. Well, I've been exposed to growing food for as long as I can remember. When I would spend a week in the summer with my grandparents, they were growing, I remember peppers most of all, especially the spicier, the better. Fig trees, all sorts of stuff. But in Matthews, I've been growing since 2018, consistently since 2018, starting with some fruits, blueberries. I tried plum, but it was funny listening to your other podcast, and they were talking about some of the diseases that can hang out with plum trees. That hit us pretty hard and felt a little defeated, but then we just kept plugging along and adding more to our growing space.
Why did you decide to start growing some things at home? What was your motivation?
Well, I was going through a wellness journey, still am, because the journey never ends. But learning what has happened to our food sources, learning everything that happens to food as it travels from wherever it's traveling from to the grocery stores. I decided buying local would probably be more beneficial with my kids. I have 4 kids at home. And I thought, well, if I'm buying local, maybe I could explore growing just in our backyard. So before they were even able to understand truly what was happening, my kids, we went ahead and built some raised beds and got in the dirt.
And do you remember, like, I know that you mentioned the fruit and you mentioned like being exposed to growing food, when you were younger, but do you remember the first thing that you ate that you grew?
Well, probably was basil. I know we had peppers and tomatoes in our raised beds, but that takes a little bit to get the fruit from there. And basil was growing beautifully. So while we're waiting, just picking basil leaves and trying the different types of basil. Now we have Tulsi basil that pops up all over the place. So the fresh herbs, and of course we had rosemary and oregano, Greek oregano, being able to add a little bit of pizzazz to our food without having to buy some extra spices from the grocery store. That was pretty awesome.
Do you have a favorite kind of basil?
Ooh, I don't know. No, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
the
The
Tulsi
Thai
basil,
basil is
the Thai basil.
delicious, but the Tulsi basil is plentiful. And while I'm going
Yeah.
through the herbal medicine courses right now, I am drying Tulsi basil like crazy and saving it for teas and all sorts of stuff. And it just pops up anywhere and everywhere. It could also be because we have chickens that will eat it and just like to spread things around.
I mean, you know this, but Tulsi basil is one of my like all-time favorite things to have. And once you sow it or plant it and it goes to
Mhm.
seed, it just, you build like this natural little seed bank in your soil and it just comes
Right,
back every year and it's
right.
magical.
Yeah, it's so fragrant. Our bees love it, all the little
Yeah.
pollinators. It's beautiful seeing everything on the flowers when they're blooming.
Yeah. Yeah. And it smells good, which is nice.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Okay, so for the listeners, can you describe what your growing space looks like?
Whew. Yes, I could talk for a while about this. We have a fruit section in our backyard, which has a couple elderberry plants, one in ground, which is massive, and we should probably trim that little love. But we do collect the flowers for an elderflower cordial. We collect the berries for the elderberry syrup. We have another elderberry plant in a grow bag. Then we have blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, fig tree, most of which is in ground. There's a couple in grow bags. And then on our other side of our backyard, all towards the front of the house, because, we have to find the greatest sun. And our main growing space has the cement blocks, thanks to your guidance there. And we have four by four beds and another raised bed, and then surrounded by all sorts of grow bags and pots and planters. And that's normally where I do most of the veg. Right now I have tons of different kinds of lettuce growing, and mustard greens and bok choy and the Tulsi basil and cucumbers and tomatoes. So the kids enjoy going in there and harvesting, pulling carrots or the sugar snap peas, which that's a crowd favorite. And another side of the house, I call it my driveway section. We have a patch of land where I've been working on the soil, amending as needed. I'm experimenting with what seeds actually like that space and what seeds don't. And so we have in that in-ground space maybe 4 or 5 little plots where we can throw in rows of corn or broccoli, or just depending on what has already been in the soil and what we can rotate through. Then we have 2 more raised beds that we just rotate crops through. Right now, one has carrots, and I got to harvest coriander seeds from the cilantro. And another one has onions and lettuce. And then we have pots of garlic. And then all along the front of the house is where I have the majority of my herbs. So rosemary, oregano, comfrey, thyme, lavender has been fun to harvest and dry this year. Very, very fragrant after drying it. Oh, the jasmine scented nicotiana. And then acetic alyssum, all sorts of, I just like to explore and try new things, see what the plant looks like, the flower, the fruits, if there is any. I try to utilize all the space that we have. I would love to eventually get rid of the front lawn and just have like a wildflower, native plants and herbs area, but we're not there yet.
Well, I'm a big proponent of that idea. Trying to turn as much of the space that you have into food producing as possible, obviously.
Right,
So
right. Yeah. Oh, if you have the space, might as well use it as much as you can.
yeah, totally. What are you most excited to grow this year?
Well, we're a sucker for tomatoes.
Sure.
Ever since you first introduced us, I say us, myself and my family, primarily my youngest girl, to Craig and all that he has done for the tomato world.
Yes, the NC Tomato Man.
Yes, we love the straw bales, and we use those along the side of the house. We use the big buckets that you could get from Lowe's or any of those stores. And we seed like crazy in the winter. And we had 16 varietals this year and wound up with 79 potted, which for our little family, that's, a lot. But it comes in handy because, I like to experiment. So I had a brand new greenhouse that I was putting some of my potted plants in, my potted up tomatoes, and something got in there and was eating all the leaves. Fortunately, because I had so many tomato plants, I had at least 2 or 3 left of each varietal that I put in. So we were golden. We could still plant the variety, but I like to have them scattered around the yard, the different tomatoes. And my youngest actually, I can't remember if we responded to one of Craig's lives or sent him an email, because, he will share some of his tomato seeds. So she responded, and he sent her last year a few seeds, and I think one that wasn't even released yet. So she was super giddy about that. Very excited. I can't remember if it was dwarf mocha's plum or chocolate heartthrob. Either way, it was a dwarf varietal. and she was thrilled. So the plants that get my kids involved and excited about growing food, that's what gets me even more excited. Or the seeds that I've never grown before. Like last year, we had the loofahs. That was so cool, growing loofahs. And look, we have all these seeds that we can now sow ourselves. And it was awesome. This,
Yeah.
kids, and go scrub off when you take your bath. So cool, all the things you can do with plants.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. It feels endless. There's just so many
Yeah.
different things to learn and do. You've kind of alluded to these, some of these things already, but beyond edible plants, what else do you have going on at home?
Oh, wow. We have so many chickens. We have so many that we had to share the wealth. A friend of ours was looking to rehome some Japanese bantams a few years ago. And we said, sure, we'll take some. And they wound up bringing close to 30, so we've had the circle of life happen, but also we've still had a gracious plenty. So we've shared with friends, we've shared with family. We even gave some to Renfrows because they were looking for some broody hens. So we just shared the wealth. And while we were doing that, we were picking up more chicks this spring, which was very addicting, and we're excited. But we have a space that's just for our roosters. So the rooster bachelor pad, they seem very happy and guys just hanging out. And then we have our lovely ladies in what we call our chicken mansion. It's a huge space for them where they can fly around, they can roost, nest, lots of space. And we have Japanese bantams, we have buff Orpingtons, we have Australorps, a white, it's not a leghorn, white rock maybe. We have the olive egger, lavender Orpingtons, silky frizzle. Then we got a set from Renfrow that was brown star, except one of them looks like a hawk, which I know that's not the case. So she's something unique, and we just call her Becky, and she's very special. And we'll find out hopefully what she is soon as she's getting bigger. But we collect right now about 3 large eggs a day from our ladies that are older. Most of our ladies are still too young. We're thinking maybe August, September, we'll be able to get eggs from them. And then our little eggs, our little Japanese bantam, which is like half the size, we get maybe 3 to 6, depending on what's happening. 3 to 6 eggs a day. But our kids, we could go through about a dozen eggs a day, depending on how hungry they are, growing kids. So it's very convenient that we have all the eggs right there in the backyard. But then we also have, my husband, Bob, is a certified beekeeper. And we have one super strong, healthy hive right now. He started with 2, lost one the first year. This is our second. We're going into our 3rd year now. And then his hive was so strong, he was able to split it. But then through this winter, that one that he split also didn't make it. So, but we have one lovely strong hive, which he is going to be harvesting the honey soon. I'm very excited about that. The kids are excited. We've been able to taste a little bit here and there, and oh gosh, it's so nice. But normally, before the bees, we would get our honey from Renfrow's. So, because they have theirs labeled as spring honey and fall honey. But it'll be nice to have our own honey, and knowing that they probably get a lot of that pollen from the Tulsi basil and the elderflowers and the honeysuckles, having an idea of where they probably go visit. It's fun.
That's very fun. And I'm very excited for you and expanding your chicken kingdom in the
Oh my
backyard.
goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
Your little bantams, little Japanese bantams are so sweet. I mean, how much do they weigh? Like a pound,
Yeah,
2 pounds?
they're
They're
not
so
that
tiny.
heavy. And you
Yeah.
helped us get our, I don't know, White Rock. I don't know you were helping us while we're out of
Yes.
town and then sent us the message about a lone chicken just wandering the neighborhood. So when we came back, we
Yes.
grabbed her. Sweet Elsa is her name, and she is an absolute mess. She's the one that always likes to take dirt baths in the garden beds. No matter what herbs I put around to deter the chickens from coming in, she loves everything
Oh.
and will get in. It's fine.
Oh, Elsa.
It's also fun because
Um,
they are free range during the day and they don't necessarily lay in the same spot all the time. The kids get to go on little egg hunts. We have to watch where the girls go, and then we might find a little nest of 5 eggs. Oh, this is where you're laying now. Lovely. Thank you so much. It's an adventure.
it's awesome. What has been the most surprising thing that you have learned while growing food?
Surprising. Um, Probably that we can grow things here in the Charlotte area that I didn't necessarily think we could. For example, the lemon trees, the
Mm.
dwarf pomegranate, the pineapple, which mine had babies, so now I have to split those. It's very exciting. Although you have to bring them indoors during the winter, I just never really thought, yeah, I could do that at home too. Beforehand, I would just think, oh, this is just a Florida thing or this particular zone. It doesn't apply to us. We can't do it, but we can. And I love that. I love following you and your greenhouse to see what you have in there. I feel like that's one of the most surprising that we can grow pretty much anything if we're aware of what the plant needs, soil and temperature and all that fun stuff. Also, all the tomato fun with the hay bales or straw bales and um, moving things around there. And not just tomatoes, I guess the squash with no vine borers and
Yeah, the straw bales, like that method is super great, super nifty. Kind of along the same lines, but what do you think has been the most challenging thing that you've
mm,
had to learn, or your greatest lesson?
right. So I guess the most challenging thing for me was to truly understand how to pivot,
Mm.
how to shift my thinking from, oh, this can't be done, or no, this isn't going to work, to, okay, well, this didn't work. This particular seed didn't work in this location for this season. And then asking the question, why? Was it the wrong season? Was it the wrong soil? Learning what the plants need, what they like. I think about cilantro because
Mm.
and the cilantro is a people either love it or they're just not drawn to it at all. I love it, but before really growing fruit at home, I would always kill the cilantro. I'm like, what is going on? I just can't grow it. I love it. I want to put it in my salsas. I can't. What's going on? Then I realized, oh yeah, it doesn't like the hot temperature. Silly. So I have some now that has gone to seed. So I have the coriander, but I have others that are kind of tucked in between lettuce. So it's still growing strong because it is covered and cool in that little area.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's my challenge that I had to overcome, was not just giving up on a particular seed, pivoting and planning accordingly for the next season.
Yeah, love that. Speaking of pivot, when I started Plant Club in 2020, that's the pivot, right?
Yeah.
So you joined, and so you are one of my longest standing Plant Club members, which is just
Woo-hoo!
so amazing, and I love that. Why did you decide to join Plant Club in 2020? And, now 4 years in, how is it still Like, how is it still supporting you?
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. So I had at the time a website, Wellness Carolinas. I was going through that health journey and I wanted to share a lot of small businesses that were making a huge impact on people's well-being in the Charlotte area. And I stumbled across the Patio Farmer. And then I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I need to do this. I need to join. Also, we had the 2020 don't go anywhere, wear the masks, you're all alone. So there's that mindset, as well as, trying to keep a positive frame of mind and healthy, happy well-being. So joining Plant Club allowed me to still enjoy being outside and working in the garden with guidance, because I don't know about anybody else, but for me during that time, things were a little bit overwhelming. A lot of no's and you can't do this, you can't do that. But when you're at home and working with the plants, the possibilities are endless. And then you have a community of people, growers who are right along there with you and sharing successes and maybe some things, guidance of areas they might need help in. So I guess just the connection was huge, connecting with other people and then also connecting back with the earth, outside nature, everything around us that we should appreciate. Thank you for that. It was therapy.
Well, thank you for being in Plant Club. I love Plant Club. It's like one of my favorite things that I get to do as a business owner. And it's just such a joy. Like every week I look forward to it. And every month there's something new. And I don't know. I thoroughly enjoy Plant Club. So I'm super
Yeah,
appreciative.
well, I love the aspect that each month there's one main focus. So, as a grower who wants to explore everything and do everything, you at least have one thing that you can definitely focus on. And, life gets crazy, it's busy. But if you just, work with this one seed or one seedling, whatever comes, whatever's on the doorstep, ready for the month, it's nice being able to be consistent, working with the earth, working with plants, and not feel overwhelmed about it. And then have the circle to fall back on, even if you're not actively sharing pictures or asking questions, you can also see what other people are doing, what they're growing, how their spaces look, tweaks that they've made to help them be successful. I love it. It's a great community.
Oh, thanks, Jen. With Plant Club, like what's been one of your favorite things that we've grown? Does
Oh,
one or
man.
two like kind
Oh,
of pop out?
yeah, right. One or two. I keep saying this. I loved the introduction to growing tomatoes from seed.
Hmm.
That definitely boomed in our house. I loved, and see, I was also a part of the Grow Wild. So it's hard for me
Oh,
to remember
yes.
which things were exclusively Plant Club and
Right.
which things were Grow Wild seeds.
Right. And so, for those of you listening, and Grow Wild was something that I archived. Maybe I think I did last year. So, the end of last year, I archived that, but it was basically a monthly seed. Like, there were just new seeds to try, and kind of some interesting seeds or like seeds that you wouldn't necessarily think to grow right off the bat.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a way to push the envelope. So yeah, I mean, if there were seeds from that come to mind, or yeah, you tell me.
Well, the tomatoes, the loofahs, the sour
Sure.
gherkins.
Oh yes, the little Mexican sour gherkins.
Yeah. This adorable little, like, watermelon looking little cucumber. They're beautiful. I have my asparagus patch that's still thriving, which I know that will last years. I love all the herbs that we've explored, the ginger and turmeric. Oh, that's fun. The peanuts. That was so
Oh
cool
my gosh.
for
Yeah.
me and the kids. And my youngest son, we were just talking the other day over dinner, and he said, well, when I have my house, I'm just going to make a whole space just for peanuts. I was like, because he was asking to grow peanuts again. And I said, well, we need a little bit more land or a larger space so we can have a nice, gracious plenty for all 6 of us. And that's what he wants to grow is a bunch of peanuts so he can eat all the peanuts. There's so
Oh
many
my gosh.
unique things that you've shared. I mean, some classic staples with guidance of how to keep those going with all the pests that might be around,
Mhm.
the aphids and those hornworms. Ugh. But
Yeah.
also some nice little surprises thrown in too.
Peanuts are just, if you haven't grown a peanut before and you live somewhere where you could potentially grow them, they do like warmer summers or hotter, shall we say, hotter
Right,
summers.
right.
They are just so fascinating. And I think once you learn, so the spoiler on peanuts is that the peanut grows underground and it grows from a flower that comes up from the plant, but then the flower burrows underground to grow the peanut. I think that's like
So cool.
the coolest thing about the peanuts is
Yeah.
like it's just kind of mind-boggling that they do that. Ah, yeah, so cool.
So fun.
Ugh. Oh
And all the
gosh.
strawberries that are going crazy. I had to replant I had to break them apart because of all the
Mm,
little runners. So now I'm experimenting with one of my strawberries. I put it in one of the cement blocks. And my thought was with each runner, I'll just have it going, skipping down the open spaces down the cement blocks. We'll see how that goes.
oh my gosh, I love that.
We'll see
That's
what
brilliant.
happens. I love the experimenting.
Keep me posted on the strawberry
Yeah.
border.
Yeah, I can do that.
Ugh, cool. All right, Jen. Well, we are getting close to the end of our conversation. I have two more questions to ask you, and these are questions that I am asking all of my podcast guests. So, the first one, and this is a compound question, but the first one is what is your favorite vegetable? Although it doesn't have to just be a vegetable, it could be a fruit or
Sure.
a grain or whatever, peanut. But what is your favorite plant to grow that you can eat? And why?
Ooh. Oh, yes. This is a very tough question. I don't know how anybody answers that question. So, I guess a lot of my growing inspiration comes from an emotional pull. So, I think about the first time I was able to grow parsnips, and that is not necessarily one that is common for a lot of people, but it is something that my grandmother and my great aunt would cook for holidays. Was they'd fry up a whole bunch of parsnips, sear them, so much butter. So I remember getting a little bit emotional the first time I pulled my parsnips because, oh my gosh, it's connecting me to family or who are no longer with me. That was pretty special. But I love it never fails with peas. The excitement from my kids, well, and myself too. The flowers, oh my gosh, with each different one. I think I even posted on our Green Oak Cottage socials the pictures of the different flowers that are from the varieties of peas. And they're just so beautiful. The whites, the purples, fuchsias. And then the kids race out and they try to get as many as they can. We're really working on sharing here, but they're always, I mean, I know it's spring, it's right after the lull of winter. So it's that first veg excitement. This past fall was the first time we grew peas during the fall. And that was a lot of fun, realizing, oh my gosh, we can do this twice in a year. What? So yeah, that is the emotional pull with my kids, the emotional pull with parsnips with my grandma. I do love seeing the blooms of the elderberry tree and harvesting
Mm.
those flowers and then making the syrup. So maybe those would be, if I can't just choose one. My top 3, I guess, would be that. Although if you ask me tomorrow, I might say something different. Who knows? Depends on what I'm harvesting.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you mentioned like the emotional connection that you
Mm.
have to some things and to that experience. I mean, that's how I am with raspberries. Like as
Oh
soon as
yeah.
I eat a raspberry, I'm just reminded of my grandparents. And it's incredible. Like my grandmother who she developed like early onset Alzheimer's
Mm.
when I was really young. And so my memories of her are like her working out in her garden in her U-pick in the berry bushes with my
Yeah.
grandfather. And then it's all of her memory journey and watching that. But when I eat, like, especially the first one, which my mouth is watering right now as I'm thinking about my raspberry bushes outside. But, whenever I harvest the first raspberry of the season, it's just I feel like I am in her raspberry patch with her. And it's just
Yeah.
this like crazy moment where you have this connection and it's just I don't know. It's fascinating that's where it lands you with it where a bite lands you, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's
Connecting those
definitely
memories.
that connection and a lot more than just growing you
Right.
know, a berry
Right.
bush, right?
That's
Second question for all my guests. We've talked about a lot of the things that you've learned as you've
okay.
been growing food at home. But
Right.
what would you
Right.
say is like the most important thing or the most like profound impact that growing food at home has had on you and your family
Um,
or just
I
you?
would say, and I do say this to family and friends who ask, it just to look at everything as an experiment. I know our zone number shifted a bit. So at what we were 7A and now we're 8. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We're seven, or I'm sorry, we're now 8A, our hardiness zone here in
yeah.
Charlotte.
Yeah. So I've had friends ask, oh, can I go ahead and plant pumpkins? And this was earlier on, like do a few now and see what happens. Then do a few later on. It's everything is an experiment for me. Wherever I plant them in pots, plant seeds in pots or in ground or even fertilizing. Like I think my tomatoes last year, I believe was a tricky year for a lot of people with tomatoes. Maybe I am remembering it
Mm,
wrong, but mine did really well. And it could have been because I was late to the party and getting my plants in. So they missed, I think maybe there was an early freeze or something.
mm,
But I look at everything as an experiment. What
mhm.
works, what doesn't, and try not to let things weigh me down if it doesn't work out and just pivot and continue on.
That's great. Our plants, I think our plants can teach us so much if we're receptive to them. And it's not just the practice of growing food. It's like, okay, well, how can you apply the things that you're learning from your plants to to your relationships or to your
Mm,
work or to, I don't know, something that you could be experiencing? What are all the different things that we can learn from our plants
right, right.
for me, that's a really exciting part about tending to plants and welcoming them all around me.
Absolutely. And just showing that grace because sometimes we can't do all the things that we want and having that grace and being gentle with ourselves as we're growing and just making sure we're loving on the plants too.
All right, Jen. Well, as we close out, tell people, like if you want, tell people where they can find out more about the things that you're doing.
Oh. Um, so we are our homesteading fun is on Green Oak Cottage Farm, which we have an Instagram, Facebook, website, and we post a lot of bee stuff, chicken stuff, and veg and fruit, just updating on what's going on around us. I'll have a few more updates as I close out my herbal medicine certification. My goal is to be able to take some of the herbs that we're growing and turn them into beneficial teas and, with a purpose and not just putting herbs together because I think, oh, that sounds nice, but having the medicinal purposes behind them, as well as the comfort of tea. And that will be on our website and on our social media platforms. And then we also have Sip on Stories, which will also have the teas pop up on there. And that is a website, Instagram, TikTok. And we will be sharing a lot of the teas on there. We have something else Bob does is he now has his own coffee line, thanks to getting the coffee plant from you. Thanks, Erin.
Oh, gosh.
He has a close friend who has a farm in El Salvador, and it's been a working farm for 150 years. So he uses the beans from there. So we have the coffee line on there. We just have our hands in all sorts of different stuff. But yeah, on Sip on Stories, I have some of the books that I enjoy. I added all of your books from that podcast, the ones I didn't have yet, to the list. And then more of the homesteading books as well. But yeah, I feel like we're just bouncing around all over, just having a good old time.
It's awesome. I love it. It's what it's all about. Do what makes you happy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Spreading joy along the way.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen. It's been great. And yeah, have fun. Good luck with all the things and all the harvesting.
Thanks.
And I know you'll keep me posted on how things are going.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for all the fun with Plant Club and everything else you've been doing. I do miss the Grow Wild, but I do love that you still have all the seed options available. So it's not like it's completely gone.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
All right. How was that, y'all? Aren't you just tickled to hear about Jen's space and can't you just hear her passion for her plants? I really love this client so much. She's so, first of all, she was willing to record this podcast episode with me. So I reached out to her for this episode. The Jen that we'll hear from next week, she actually reached out to me to be on the show, which I thought was really special. But Jen is just a fantastic human. We have, outside of growing plants, we have so much in common as well. I mean, her husband, or her and her husband and their kids, they're always up to fun new projects, either around the house or around town. And so are Marshall and I. We're always getting into something new and keeping ourselves busy, which, for us is really just the spice of life, if you will. So I just love that synergy. And I feel like people who grow food at home have a lot more in common than just growing food at home. There's so much more that we can come together on. Not to toot our own horns or anything, but I think people who grow food are the best people. Now, that's not to say if you're listening to this and you don't grow food, I love you too. You're great. Okay, I'm just so grateful and appreciative for Jen for hopping on the show and being my first client interview on the podcast. I know she's also an avid weekly listener. So, just special shout out to you, Jen. Next week's episode, pretty straightforward. We're going to hear from Jen C. and hear all about her journey with growing food, what led her to growing food, what her challenges and surprises have been too. So tune in next week for that fun episode. So if you've listened to this podcast in the past, then you know that at the end of every episode, I like to share a fun little fact, and Jen A will get a kick out of this fun fact. But did you know that basil seeds are mucilaginous? Yeah. So if your basil has gone to seed by chance and we get one of our lovely afternoon rain showers, as is very common. I mean, it needs to be more common. Honestly, we're in a drought. But next time it rains and your basil seeds and your basil plants have gone to seed, or you see like the little flowers on the top, check to see if you notice any basil seeds that may have, fluttered away in the wind, captured some water. Maybe they're laying around. They kind of look like frog eggs when they're swollen. You could also compare basil seeds and their mucilaginous form to like what a chia seed looks like when it's been soaked. You can plant them, stuff them down in the soil, do whatever you want with them. But that's what they are. So fun fact, basil seeds are mucilaginous. Yep. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for being here. Anything that was mentioned in today's show is going to be tucked into those show notes. So use those as a reference for yourself. And I hope everything is thriving and growing and prospering in your growing space. If it's not, take a look in those show notes. I might have a resource or two that's handy for you. Okay. Well, I will see you again next week. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of the Growing Space Podcast. I hope that you learned something new and that you were able to take this new information home with you and implement into your growing journey and into your growing space. As always, I am here to support you and your food growing journey. If you'd like to learn more about the different services and resources and membership programs that I run through the Patio Farmer, please check out my website, thepatiofarmer.com. You can also follow me on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and oh my gosh, most recently, TikTok. Wow. I know. Here I am. Patio Farmer is on TikTok. It's very exciting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a like or a rating or a review if you want. Maybe share a little comment about your favorite part of the episode. Share it with a friend. The more interactions I get with my little podcast online, the more I'm able to help people just like you in their food growing journeys. As always, thanks for being here, and I will see you again next week.